I was looking through some of the David Sloan books, and I was trying to think if there was a spin-off character maybe that I could use. And in Murder One, there are two Seattle police detectives, and one is named Kensington Rowe, and one is named Tracy Crosswhite. And I thought Kensington Rowe's perfect, right? He's a guy, ex NFL football player. He's now a detective in Seattle. Interesting character. I called up my agent and I said, okay, I think I got a guy, Kensington Rowe. And my agent said, no, Tracy Crosswhite. And I said, really? And she said, why was she a high school chemistry teacher? And I said, I don't know. She said, find out. And, so as far as pedigree goes, I grew up with four sisters. They're all professionals. My mother went back to school when she was in her 40s. She became a CPA, a master's in tax. She had a practice until into her 80s. So I was around professional women all my life. And then when I practiced law for all those years, there were a lot of professional attorneys, female attorneys that I spent time with, that I dealt with, that I helped on cases, that helped me on my cases. So, people ask me all the time, how do you write from the perspective of a woman? And, my answer is probably the same as your answer. But what I say is I don't write from the perspective of a woman. That would be a huge mistake. I write from the perspective of a human being who has a tremendous amount of garbage in her background that she's trying to clear. The death of her sister, the death of her father, and that's really what I write about. I write about wounded human beings, and she's a wounded human being. The fact that she's a female, I don't specifically try to write that. Emily Sutton has done all of the Audible books, and I think she sounds a lot like Tracy Crosswhite. My image is always a Seattle homicide detective named Jennifer Southworth. Jennifer was, if not the first, I think she was the second female homicide detective. And just twist of fate, I had an opportunity to sit down with her, and she became basically a source for me. And it's funny because I had already written the sort of the first draft of my sister's grave, and then I meet Jen through another police contact who was helping me, and in walks this 5'10" blonde, and she's tough as nails. And so I always kind of have pictured Jen because she just came out of the blue, and I hear Jen's voice when I'm writing dialogue for Tracy Crosswhite. I think that more than anything is what keeps me going. Is I always try to challenge myself. I have a book, the next Tracy book coming out. I think it's Tracy 11, which is a dead draw. That came about because my father and we used to sit down and watch Clint Eastwood in the old spaghetti westerns. You remember those Fistful of Dollars and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and all those movies. And Tracy's that's what she does. She does cowboy action shooting. She does single action revolver shooting. She's very, very fast. Now she hasn't done it in years. She's out, but I had this thought, what if she was goaded into basically a draw? What would happen? And it was really fun to write because I could hear my dad, sitting there watching it like he was watching a movie. And I lost my dad 18 years ago at a very young age. He was 76. And so I miss him. And it's a way to kind of keep him alive with me. You may think you're writing a series, but you never know if you're writing a series until the first one comes out, right? If it does really well, you're writing a series. If it doesn't do very well, then you're like, yeah, do I really want to do a series here? And your publisher's like, do you really want to do a series here? Her Deadly Game came out and did extremely well. I mean, just really, really well. And so it was really, that was fantastic because that sort of opened the door for me to then start to really dive in and explore this law firm and that. So in Beyond Reasonable Doubt, my thought was, I have a friend at a golf club that I belong to, and he's a doctor, but he's had Parkinson's for the last 18 years. And Dan really is the one that said to me, he said, you ought to look into doing a book on a small startup medical that's preying on people's hopes and dreams. They're trying to come up with a cure for something. And that was all I really needed. People will say all the time, Beyond Reasonable Doubt, is that about Elizabeth Holmes? I didn't even know who Elizabeth Holmes was when I started writing that book. Of course, when I wrote, when people asked me that, I went and I looked back up who Elizabeth Holmes is, and I was like, wow, I was blown away. I mean, here's this young woman, starts a startup company, and is basically doing the fake it till you make it, thing, and she's bringing in, tens of millions of dollars, and it's all under false pretenses. I had a very similar character in Jenna. She's a sociopath, and I wanted her to be a childhood friend of Kira's because I wanted Kira to understand who Jenna truly was in a way that other people couldn't understand. So here Jenna gets herself in trouble. She needs help. She goes to Patsy. Patsy's no longer trying cases. Boom. Jenna and Kira are facing each other again, and Kira has to step in and defend this woman who she thinks is guilty. She thinks she's a sociopath. Um, and it's funny because as I'm 64 now, or be 64, and I go back and I look at my life, and there were sociopaths in my life. I go back and I look and I go, oh my God, that person was a sociopath. There were people in my life that were on the spectrum that I never thought about. I go back and I'll meet them and I'll think, oh my God, he's on the spectrum. So we all have had those people in our lives. I just don't know that we all recognized it at the time we were going through it. In her Cold Justice, I wanted to make it much more personal for Tracy. And so she comes back at the end of Beyond Reasonable Doubt. She takes it. She needs a break after what's happened, and so she goes off to Italy by herself to spend some time there. The romance of it, the beauty of it, and ironically, my wife and I spent our 30th anniversary in Italy doing this tour, right? So she comes back, and J.P. Harrison, her private investigator at the firm, is waiting for her, and his nephew has been arrested. His nephew has been arrested because a coworker who he works with gave him 2 packages to hold. The police come to his house. They find out that in one package is fentanyl, and the other package is $16,000 in cash. And the drug dealer and his girlfriend have been brutally murdered. So this kid who's black is arrested, thrown in the federal pen, and he's waiting to be arraigned, but they're waiting to find out what happened in the state case, which is the 2 murders. So, JP says, it's my nephew, I need help. And, it's one of those moments when, if you've ever been a lawyer and certainly a police officer, when something happens, you get that phone call, hey, my nephew was in a traffic accident, and what should he do? Or, hey, my nephew, started a company, and one of his employees is trying to start their own company. Can you help? Everybody assumes that you can help everybody. You can't. But Tracy is a defense lawyer, and Michael is accused of the 2 murders. And he's this young black man, and the question, he's being prosecuted by this very aggressive prosecuting attorney, but she's aggressive and she's really good, but she's not always ethical. And so really that's what it is. It's Kira goes into battle against this very experienced prosecutor, and what's at stake is the freedom of this young man. The beauty of it is that I realize that it doesn't get any better than this, right? Because you can go back and change the draft many, many times. But for me, I love the banter of when you see a good lawyer in court and he's asking a witness questions and he's getting answers, and then suddenly, bam, he just hits her with this question out of the blue that nobody saw coming. He's just led her right to it, right? And it's like, that to me is the adrenaline rush. It's just that split second of go. And I really try to keep that in my legal thrillers by not going back too much, by letting the characters sort of stumble their way through the testimony, which is often what it's really like. But have Kira then, right? She knows exactly where she's leading this person. In her Deadly Game, Patsy comes back into the courtroom, and he's this 40 years public defender. He's very, very good, and he takes on a police detective. And I can't tell you the number of people that have emailed me about that scene because Patsy is so good. I was never that good, right, as a lawyer in court, but I get to be that good when I'm writing these books, and that's what's exciting for me. I love that the Killing on the Hill. I was up cleaning out the attic. I have two kids, and they've moved out of the house now, and I was trying to get rid of stuff. We get inundated with stuff, and so I was in the attic. I was trying to get rid of stuff, and I found this box, and in the box I found these scrapbooks and all these newspaper articles from back 1933. I'm like, what the hell is this? Well, we had lived in my wife's grandmother's house, and when we moved, a lot of that stuff came with us. And so my wife goes, oh my God, that's my grandfather's scrapbooks. And I open up the first scrapbook, and I find lawyers clash in Pom Pom nightclub killing. Well, you're a writer, right? Well, the minute I see that headline, I'm like, holy shit, that's a book. I mean, there's something here. Pom Pom nightclub killing. And then I find out the Pom Pom nightclub was on what was called Profanity Hill. I mean, 1933, bootlegging, prohibition, the Great Depression. It was just too good to be true. I love that book. I love William Schumacher. I loved all the characters in that book, and I hope someday that it can get another boost and more people can find it, because I think it's one of the best books that I've written.